They called me just the visitor. Not by name, never by name, just the visitor, or sometimes the lady who comes every day. I was 63 years old, my gray hair pulled back in a simple bun that I tied the same way every morning, wearing my beige coat that had seen better days, and carrying the same old brown leather purse I'd had for 15 years. I sat in the corner of room 237 every single day, from 2 p.m. until visiting hours ended at 8, and the hospital staff walked past me like I was part of the furniture. They never asked who I was, never asked why I came. They just assumed I was family, or a friend, or just some lonely old woman with nothing better to do. They had no idea. No idea who I was to him, no idea what we'd been through, no idea that I'd been coming here every single day for 7 months. Until today, when he finally woke up and told them. Room 237 held the man I'd loved for 42 years, Thomas. He'd been in a coma since the accident last March, a car crash on a rainy Tuesday morning that changed everything. The doctors said he might never wake up. His family had stopped coming after the first month. His ex-wife visited twice and decided it was too hard. His grown children came on birthdays and holidays, stayed for 20 minutes, and left looking relieved it was over. But I came every day. I sat in the green vinyl chair in the corner, the one that made my back ache after a few hours, and I talked to him, read to him, held his hand. The nurses worked around me. The doctors gave me polite nods, but nobody really saw me. I wasn't his wife. We'd never married, couldn't for most of those 42 years because he'd been married to someone else. It wasn't an affair in the traditional sense. His marriage had been over emotionally long before I came into the picture, dead in everything but paperwork, but I was still the other woman. The secret, the one who existed in the margins of his life. We'd built a life together in the spaces nobody else was looking. Quiet dinners, weekend trips to places where nobody knew us. 42 years of loving someone who couldn't publicly claim me. And when the accident happened, I had no legal right to be here, no power to make medical decisions, no official recognition. I was just the visitor. The nursing staff was professional but distant. They'd give me updates if I asked directly, but they never volunteered information. "He's stable," they'd say, or "no changes today." I learned to read his charts when they left them on the counter, learned to interpret the monitors, learned to tell when his breathing changed or his heart rate fluctuated. I brought flowers every Monday, replaced them when they wilted. I brought his favorite music and played it softly on my phone. I brought photographs and taped them to the wall where he might see them if he opened his eyes. The nurses never said anything about the photographs. They probably didn't even look at them closely enough to wonder who the woman was in all those pictures with him. Dr. Morrison came in twice a week to check on Thomas. A neurologist, maybe 50 years old, competent but detached in the way doctors get when they've seen too many hopeless cases. He'd examine Thomas, make notes, and leave. Sometimes he'd acknowledge me with a brief nod. Once he asked, "Are you family?" I said, "Something like that," and he didn't push further. It was easier than explaining. Easier than saying, "I'm the woman who's loved him for 4 decades but has no legal claim to him. I'm the one who knows he takes his coffee black with 1 sugar, who knows he's allergic to penicillin, who knows he's terrified of dying alone. But to you, I'm nobody." His daughter, Melissa, came last Sunday. She was in her 30s, professional, always in a hurry. She walked in while I was reading to Thomas from the newspaper. He always liked to stay informed, even about things that didn't matter. She looked at me with mild confusion. "Oh, you're still coming?" Not a question, a statement tinged with judgment. I nodded and stood to give her privacy. "No, don't leave on my account," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "I can only stay a few minutes anyway." She stayed 12 minutes. checked her phone 4 times, kissed her father's forehead like it was an obligation, and left while I went back to reading the newspaper. The truth was, I'd made peace with being invisible a long time ago. When you love someone you can't have publicly, you learn to exist in the shadows. You learn to be grateful for what you get instead of resentful about what you don't. Thomas and I had our moments, beautiful, precious moments that were ours alone. That had to be enough. And when he ended up here, unconscious, unreachable, I kept coming because leaving would mean giving up, and I'd never given up on him in 42 years. I wasn't about to start now. But today was different. Today, during Dr. Morrison's weekly rounds, something changed. I was in my usual corner, knitting, something to keep my hands busy during the long hours, when Dr. Morrison walked in with 2 residents trailing behind him. Teaching rounds, apparently. He began explaining Thomas's case in that clinical voice doctors use when discussing patients like they're interesting puzzles, rather than human beings. 70-year-old male, traumatic brain injury, comatose for 7 months, minimal brain activity, poor prognosis for meaningful recovery. One of the residents asked about family involvement. Dr. Morrison glanced at his chart. Minimal. Adult children visit occasionally. Ex-wife has medical power of attorney, but defers to medical team for decisions. The residents looked at me, sitting in the corner with my knitting, my beige coat draped over the chair back, my gray hair probably messy from running my fingers through it all afternoon. His eyes found me, sitting in the corner with my knitting in my lap, my beige coat draped over the chair back, my gray hair probably messy from running my fingers through it all afternoon. Our eyes met, and something shifted in his face. Recognition. Relief. His mouth moved, trying to form words. Dr. Morrison leaned closer. "Mr. Carter, take it easy. You've been unconscious for a long time. Don't try to talk yet." But Thomas kept trying, his eyes never leaving mine, his hand reaching weakly towards me. Ellie?
My heart stopped. Nobody called me Ellie except him. The residents looked confused. Dr. Morrison looked at me with new interest. "Do you know him?" Before I could answer, Thomas spoke again, stronger this time, despite the breathing tube they were already removing. "Ellie, where's Ellie?" I stood up slowly, my old knees protesting, and moved toward the bed. Dr. Morrison stepped aside, watching carefully. I took Thomas's hand, the hand I'd held every day for 7 months, and his fingers closed around mine with surprising strength. "I'm here," I said quietly. "I've been here the whole time." His eyes filled with tears. "Thought I dreamed you." I shook my head, my own tears falling now. "No dream. I'm real. I'm here." Dr. Morrison was staring at us with an expression I'd never seen before. Not clinical curiosity, something more human. "Mr. Carter, this woman, Ellie, she's been visiting you every single day since you were admitted. Every single day for 7 months." Thomas's eyes never left my face. "Told you, never leave." I smiled through my tears. "I never do." One of the residents asked, "Are you his wife?" Before I could answer, Thomas spoke, his voice getting stronger with each word. "Should be, would be, if I hadn't been stupid." He looked at Dr. Morrison. "This woman, 42 years, loved her. 42 years, never married her. Biggest mistake." Dr. Morrison's professional mask cracked slightly. "Mr. Carter, you need to rest. We can discuss." Thomas interrupted him, stubborn as ever. "No, need to say, she's not just visitor. She's everything." Dr. Morrison looked at me properly for the first time, really looked. saw the gray hair I'd touched up less often since the accident because nobody was seeing me anyway, saw the beige coat I'd worn so many times it was practically my uniform, saw the old purse, the worn shoes, the wedding ring I wore on my right hand because I'd bought it for myself years ago when I accepted Thomas would never give me one, saw 42 years of quiet, constant, invisible love standing in front of him. "You've been here every day?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. I nodded. "Every day, 2 to 8, 7 months." One of the residents pulled up something on her tablet. "Dr. Morrison, the visitor logs confirm it. Ellie Monroe signed in every single day since March 15th, never missed once." Dr. Morrison looked stunned. "Every day?" Thomas squeezed my hand. "Told you, she's everything." The doctor turned to Thomas. "Mr. Carter, we need to update your medical power of attorney. Your ex-wife has been making decisions, but if you'd prefer—" Thomas didn't let him finish. "Ellie, only Ellie, should have been from the start." The next hour was a blur of activity, nurses checking vitals, doctors asking questions, tests being ordered. Thomas was weak but lucid, answering questions, squeezing my hand when he got tired. Dr. Morrison stayed, watching with something like wonder as Thomas refused to let go of me, as he asked me to explain what had happened in the months he'd been unconscious, as he introduced me to every nurse and resident as Ellie, the love of my life. Not just a visitor anymore, not invisible, finally seen. Melissa arrived within an hour of getting the call. She burst into the room, relief and shock on her face. "Dad! Oh my God, Dad!" She hugged him carefully, crying. Then she saw me standing by his bedside, our hands still linked, and her expression shifted. Confusion, recognition, understanding. "You're in all the photographs," she said quietly. I nodded. She looked at her father. "Dad, who is she?" Thomas smiled weakly. "The woman I should have married. The woman who never left. Not once." Melissa sat down slowly, processing. Thomas told her everything, or a version of everything appropriate for a daughter to hear. How we'd met, how he'd been too scared to leave his marriage for years, how by the time he'd finally divorced, we'd gotten comfortable with our arrangement, how he'd always meant to marry me but never did, how I'd stood by him anyway. Melissa listened, her face going through a dozen emotions. Finally, she looked at me. "You came every day?" I nodded. "Every day, 2 to 8, 7 months." Dr. Morrison pulled up something on her tablet. "Miss Monroe, I owe you an apology. I should have asked who you were. I should have included you in updates. I should have seen what was right in front of me." I told him it was fine, but he shook his head. "It's not fine. You were here when his family wasn't. You cared when others had given up. You deserved to be recognized." He paused. "For what it's worth, I think your presence made a difference. We see this sometimes. Coma patients who have regular, loving contact often have better outcomes. I believe he heard you all those months. You brought him back." The hospital staff treated me differently after that. Nurses greeted me by name, updated me without being asked, brought me coffee during long afternoons. Doctors included me in discussions about Thomas's recovery plan. The day nurse told me she'd always wondered about me, about why I came so faithfully, but hadn't wanted to pry. "Now I know," she said with a smile. Love, the real kind, the kind that shows up, the kind that stays, the kind that doesn't need recognition but deserves it anyway. Thomas's recovery was slow but steady. Physical therapy, speech therapy, rebuilding strength. I was there for all of it, but now I wasn't in the corner, I was at his side. Melissa visited more often, and we built a tentative friendship based on our shared love for Thomas. She apologized for dismissing me before. I thought you were just some woman who had nothing better to do. I had no idea you were his person. I told her I understood. How could she have known? I'd been invisible for so long, I'd almost forgotten what it felt like to be seen. 3 months later, Thomas was discharged to a rehabilitation facility. The day before he left, he asked me to marry him, properly, with a ring he'd had Melissa buy. 42 years too late, he said, his voice still weak but determined. But better late than never. Will you finally let me make an honest woman of you? I said yes. Of course I said yes. I'd been saying yes to him for 42 years. This was just the first time he'd asked in front of witnesses. They don't call me just the visitor anymore. They call me his fiancée, soon his wife. But the title doesn't matter as much as I thought it would. What matters is that he sees me, that everyone sees me, that my love, which had lived in the shadows for so long, finally has light. I still wear my beige coat, still carry my old purse, still pull my gray hair back in a simple bun, but now when I walk into his room, he says my name, Ellie, and that makes all the difference.